Welcome everyone to ME105 Medical Terminology. My name is Angie Bland and I'm going to be your instructor on our journey through medical terminology this session. Each week I will have a presentation that's geared towards really helping prepare you for the quiz, as well as just great information from the chapter readings. So let's dive right in. Within this week's presentation, I'll have a little bit of extra information regarding some of the weekly expectations and things like that. As always, if you have questions, don't hesitate to email me at any time. That is the fastest way to get a hold of me. So let's see what we have in store for this week. Our week 1 objectives are listed on this slide. I'm not going to read through each of them, but basically we are focusing this week on chapter 1 and 2 in your textbook. If you haven't done so already, definitely go ahead and get your textbook ordered. It's very important that you get it sooner than later. The textbook chapters for the first couple of weeks are built into the classroom in the modules section. So if you haven't received your books, it's not going to hold you up from doing the weekly material this week, but you do want to get it on order. Our textbook for this class is Quick and Easy Medical Terminology, and it's the 8th edition. That's the book that you should be looking for or should have in front of you if you have it already. In terms of your weekly expectations, our class is built so that 3 things are generally due each week: a quiz, an assignment, and discussion postings. We ask that you do your discussion postings by Wednesday, and that's just your initial posting responding to what it's asking, and then throughout the week you can work on replying to other people's postings. You should reply to at least 2 other people throughout the week so that you have a minimum total of discussion postings of 3 each week. Make them nice, substantive posts. It should be more than a sentence. They should be probably a paragraph, at least in length. That way you're diving really deep into the material. And as always with any written assignment, you do want to cite your source, especially on your initial discussion posting. By Sunday, you want to make sure you have your quiz and assignment done each week. The only exception to this rule is week 10, and week 10 is a little bit of an oddball because it starts on a Thursday and ends on a Thursday, but I'll remind you of that when we get closer to that week. Throughout our medical terminology journey, you will be asked to learn basically a new language, and that's what medical terminology is. It's pretty much learning a foreign language, the language of medicine. So not only is it important to know the terms when you see them written, but it's also just as important to know how to say them with proper pronunciation, as well as how to spell them. Some medical terms, if you spell them incorrectly, can actually mean something different. So I will tell you on your assignments as well as your quiz, spelling does matter. So you will lose points if it's not spelled correctly. It's not because I want to be mean. It's just that I want to make sure that you're learning the proper way to spell the terms. That way when you're out in the professional world, you're not embarrassing yourself by spelling something incorrectly, or even worse, harming someone by using a term that's spelled incorrectly that could actually mean something else. Diving right into our material from chapter 1, we talk about roots and combining vowels. This can be a little bit tricky at first, but once you kind of get the gist of it, it helps you with the meat and potatoes of the term. So to understand medical language, you must first become familiar with the elements of medical terms. A root is a foundation of a word. It's the base of the word which gives it its meaning, and the word roots are generally of Greek or Latin origin. Some words simply begin with a root, such as the word pneumonia. Some words may have more than one root. Some words will also have a suffix and a prefix, and we'll talk about those things in just a second. You will see in the term listed here, hematology, there's something labeled as a combining vowel, and let's talk about that. Combining vowels, they join a root to another root or a root to a suffix. A combining vowel is like a bridge that connects the main roots together, and the combining vowel just helps make the word easier to pronounce. When you see the term combining form, This is where people start to get a little bit confused. Don't make it harder than it is. It's just the word root plus that vowel. That means the combining form. And the combining forms, again, help glue roots together, and they can also come before a suffix. So let's talk next about what a suffix is. The suffix is the ending of a word, and not all words will have suffixes. Many words will simply end with the root element. The example here, you see num plus o, so that's going to be the word root plus the combining vowel. And then when you see the form next to that, pneumo, that's the combining form, where it's that combining vowel plus that root shown together. So again, the suffix, found at the end of the medical term, it can be attached to the root element or to a combining form if there's that combining vowel used. So let's talk about a rule. Not all suffixes have a combining vowel. So there's a rule involved to help you remember this. If the suffix starts with a vowel, then no combining vowel is needed. For example, the word dermatitis. The suffix itis, I-T-I-S, that has a vowel at its beginning, so no combining vowel is needed. If the suffix begins with a consonant, then a combining vowel is needed. For example, dermato, the combining form with ologist at the end would make dermatologist. That ologist does not start with a vowel, it starts with an L. So that suffix would need that O combining vowel added to make the word easier to say and to be that bridge between the root and the suffix. Occasionally, some words can even have two suffixes. Let's talk about what a prefix is next. And actually, week 2 will focus on prefixes a little bit more, so we won't go too heavy into this. But a prefix is found at the beginning of a medical term. It gives a new meaning to the root. So a prefix will never require the use of a combining vowel. Example, pericardium and epigastric. They do not require the use of a combining vowel. Occasionally, a term can have more than one prefix, or they can have no prefixes in a medical term. So you can either have 1, 2, or no prefixes in your medical words. And again, in week 2, we'll discuss prefixes a little bit more. When you're looking at medical terms, look at it as a puzzle. So medical terms are like the puzzle pieces. When we break it apart, we can see that we have these different pieces, and when put together, it makes a whole picture or a medical term. So a prefix plus a combining form plus a suffix can make a term. The example here is hypodermic. Actually, I'm sorry, the example isn't shown on your slide. So you can see on your slide telecardiogram. We have the prefix tele, the combining form cardi plus O, your combining vowel, and gram is your suffix. The prefix plus a suffix can also make a term. Dyspnea. You can see there we don't necessarily have a combining form, we just have a prefix and a suffix. Or a combining form plus a suffix can make a term. An example, and it's not shown on here, is dermatitis. Dermata is your combining form, and itis is your suffix. So there's many different ways that a puzzle can be built. You can have a puzzle with many pieces, or you can have a puzzle with very few pieces, and it's the same thing with medical terms. Sometimes we will have prefix, sometimes we won't, sometimes we'll have a suffix, and sometimes we'll have more than one prefix or more than one suffix. When it comes to plurals, plurals can be tricky with medical terms because it's just not as easy as adding an S. In the terms that we're familiar with in the English language, generally speaking, if we add an S, sometimes we have to change a Y to an IE, that kind of thing. It's a little bit easier. Medical terms can be a little trickier. The plural endings are not frequently based on English language, so the plural forms of medical terms are based on Latin and Greek languages. So adding an S does not make it plural. You simply have to memorize the plural of different words, unfortunately. I wish there was an easy rule that I could tell you. And it would be extremely impossible for us to go through all of the medical terms and tell you what the suffix is. So it's one thing, as you start using them, you will become more familiar with them. Here are some examples of plural forms, and you can see the IS becomes ES, the UM becomes an A, US becomes an I, the A becomes an AE, the IX becomes an ICES. So they are truly not simple like adding an S. But again, something that as you're using the terms, you just simply have to memorize. The next part, I want to go through some helpful hints for your quiz in terms of the content that it's going to cover. You will find in my presentations, I don't cover everything that's in the chapter readings. I do expect that you read the chapters, but I'm really going to hit hard the information that's going to be on your quiz because I want that to be in the forefront of your brain. So it's very helpful for you to listen to the presentations prior to taking your quiz. There's one suffix that your quiz asks about, and it's stasis. That term means stopping or controlling. So I do want you to remember that one for sure. Some other medical terms to know are listed on this slide, so let's go through these rather quickly. Again, this is a slide that you might want to jot down the information from and then look up these terms on your own. Angiography, that's suture of a blood vessel. Amniocentesis, this is the surgical puncture of the membrane that surrounds the fetus. Neuralgia, this is pain along the course of a nerve, so basically nerve pain. Hernia, that's the protrusion of all or part of an organ through the wall of a cavity. Dilation, that means stretching of a structure. Edema, that's the presence of abnormally large amounts of fluid in the tissue that results in swelling. Pyromania, that's excessive preoccupation with fire. Carcinoma, that's another term for cancer. Prolapse means sagging. Ophthalmoplasty, this is a surgical repair of the eye. Augmentation mammioplasty, that's a surgical procedure to increase the size of the breasts. Neurectomy, that's partial or total excision of a nerve. Coloplexy, that's a surgical procedure in which the colon is sutured to the abdominal wall. And emesis is a medical term that means vomiting. All of those are going to be things that you need to be familiar with for your quiz, so please make sure to study those things when you are preparing. I want to end with some friendly reminders, some do's and don'ts per se. Let's look at the do's first. Definitely ask questions when needed. Don't ever hesitate to email me. Don't think a question is ever going to be stupid. Any question is important. If it's something you're wondering about, just ask. Don't ever assume. Just ask me. It doesn't hurt. The clock in the upper right of the do's, you have to have good time management. We don't meet at set times, so I'm going to expect that on your calendar, you're going to set times to work on our class. This also means that it's important to turn your work in on time. One of the easiest ways to not do well in the class is to not turn your work in or to not turn it in on time. So it's going to be really important that you write down all of your due dates and you make a plan to have the work done in a timely fashion. That goes to the lower left corner too when it says set goals. Definitely think ahead of what you want to achieve for the week. Also think ahead of what grade you're hoping to get out of the class, and then make a plan to achieve it. The middle says have fun. I always want my students to think of this as a journey that's getting you to what you truly want to be in life. So this should be fun. This shouldn't be something that's miserable or boring or that you regret or hate. This is all about getting you prepared for your career path, and I want it to be fun. The lower right of the do's, the sponge. That's one of the most important things. You pay a lot of money to go to school. Soak up everything you can about it. Soak up all of the knowledge, soak up all of the help, get everything you possibly can. This is what you're choosing to do, and I want you to get everything you possibly can from it. There's one big don't, and it's a scary one. I can't look out into a sea of a classroom of students and see your face and see whether you're getting the information or not. And I can't look out there and find you if you are missing. So I rely on you to contact me and to communicate and to log in and to do the weekly expectations and to listen to the lectures and to ask questions. The worst thing you can do is not be present. If you are not logging in every day and not checking your email every day, you're going to really do yourself a disservice. So definitely communicate, definitely participate, and get the most out of this experience that you possibly can. As always, again, and I can't stress this enough, ask questions. You know, you're never in this journey alone. I'm always right here with you. So when something pops into your head that you have a question about, just shoot me an email. Again, don't ever hesitate. As always, the information that's going to be presented each week is from your textbook, so that is your main reference source for our class. Thank you so much for your time this week. I do look forward to your work coming through. Definitely week 1 can be a little bit intimidating, so as you have questions, just reach right out to me and I'll be happy to help you through this journey. Each week it does get easier because then you know the classroom, you know the expectation, and it just gets more fun and a little bit less stressful. Thank you so much. Have a great week. Bye-bye.